and he's a good friend of the Knee Jerks for a reason. He's a writer, but he's more than just a writer, which is why he is a good friend of the Knee Jerks. We bring Dave on when we want to because he has a way, Al, of
Mhm.
picking up on stories that are just need to be picked up on, frankly.
Yes.
And Dave's got a very unique way of bringing to like some of the quirkier, under the radar things. We've had him on talk about Hamtramck ballpark. We've had him on talking about Ike Blessett and that situation, and he's been on the show on other occasions, and always talking about something that just isn't really talked about in the mainstream until Dave gets his fingers on it. And then all of a sudden, it starts to grow legs, and this is no exception. Tonight, we're very, very happy and thrilled to be joined by Dave and another special guest, Gary Cooper, former big league ball player for the Atlanta Braves. And this is a very special night for the Knee Jerks. We've been promoting this for a couple of weeks now. Dave is all over this story, and it's just growing legs. Gary Cooper, 1 day shy of earning a big league MLB pension, which we'll get into in a second. But first, David, thank you for being here. We so appreciate your work, and thanks for joining us tonight.
Hey, Greg, Al, thanks for having
Mm-hmm.
us on the show. And I mean, I'm grateful to be here, but the real guest of honor tonight is our guest in Savannah, Georgia, right there, Gary Cooper.
Gary, thanks for joining us tonight, my friend.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
So, Dave, if you could kind of catch our again, this is if you can't even flick the internet on anymore without bumping into the story that you sunk your teeth into, and kind of catch everybody up, Dave, if you would, folks who may not be aware of what's going on here with this story. Just kind of take us through what the situation is, first of all, and then just lay that out, and then we'll get into how you got involved, and then Gary will. We'll get Gary into this, but just kind of lay the groundwork here of what the story even is.
Sure thing. Well, our special guest here tonight, Mr. Cooper, former outfielder for the Atlanta Braves. Gary was once considered the fastest man in professional baseball. This was in the late 1970s and early 80s. And Gary played in the summer of 1980. Coop, as we call him, Coop played 42 days. He was on the Atlanta Braves roster for 42 days as a pinch runner and defensive specialist, a great outfielder. And he was on the roster for 42 days through the end of the season, the 1980 season. And the next year, they send him back to the minor leagues, and Coop never made it back to the show. So here we are, more than 40 years later. Coop, who's now 67 years old, is just 1 day shy of qualifying for a pension from Major League Baseball. Not only that, one of his games was rained out, and they never made it up.
Hmm.
And that's probably the most. That's probably the worst part of this whole thing was that rain out. Can you explain? First of all, let's go to Gary Cooper now. Gary, can you explain? Now that Dave set that up for us so nicely, can you explain what the rules are a little bit more in depth about this 43 days and kind of take us through your efforts to kind of get around that, if you will?
Well, I always say I was told, by one of the executives, take 1 day to get on a baseball pension. And I was going on that as we speak, and it ran out, and I could have seen if, I was on the roster during that time, and the season in over till October the 5th. As a matter of fact, I still was on the roster till January the 5th. That's my thing, that I had my days. They didn't made it up, but I still been on the roster. That's why we keep going through now. So, I don't know.
And Greg, so Gary's supporters in Savannah, a Savannah businessman by the name of Robert Jonas, started a petition. There's a petition on change.org. If you just search Gary Cooper, Atlanta Braves, and change.org, you'll find the petition, which at last check had about 17,000 signatures. And that petition is urging the Atlanta Braves to consider adding Coop to their coaching staff or to their roster for one game. And if they were to do that, any major league team could do it, but it would make the most sense if the Braves would do it. That would then qualify Coop for his pension. And there's some precedent here. The Atlanta Braves actually did this once before in 1968. They added none other than Satchel Paige to their roster. I think he joined the team in 1969. He was on the roster for several weeks, and he was able to qualify for major league pension after that. So there's some historic precedent here, and it seems it would be fitting if the Atlanta Braves were to add Coop to their staff or to their roster for one game. And while it's still a long shot, I think it's possible that come August they could offer Coop a minor league contract and then call him up to the big league team for one game in September when the rosters expand. That's the hope anyhow. But in lieu of that petition succeeding, there's also a GoFundMe campaign that Mr. Jonas started for Coop. And if your viewers are interested, you can find that at GoFundMe.com. Just search for Gary Cooper and the Atlanta Braves at GoFundMe.com.
Dave, tell us how you got wind of this, and what led you to, because I know you're very passionate about this. What led you to dive so deep into this?
First, if I can, I'm getting a little feedback right now, some background noise. I'm not sure where it's coming from.
Yeah, I'm hearing that too. There we go. Okay,
there.
Go ahead.
I think okay. So, so Mr. Jonas, as I mentioned, Robert Jonas, Savannah businessman. Robert Jonas runs a landscaping company down there called Robert's Lawn Care, and Coop has done a lot of work for Robert over the years in landscaping. And Robert reached out to SABR, the Society for American Baseball Research, got a hold of a guy in Colorado Springs by the name of Rod Nelson. And Rod is a former Detroiter. That's how I know him. Rod used to live here in Detroit. And Rod is the one who brought the story to my attention. Coop being just one day shy of a pension. And I should mention also, so the Players Union, the MLBPA, which is led by former Detroit Tiger Tony Clark, their spokesperson who I spoke with for my story came out last month in ESPN's Anscape.com. If your viewers haven't seen the story yet, just Google Gary Cooper Atlanta Braves and Anscape.com. It's like landscape except without the L, Anscape.com. I spoke with a spokesperson for the MLBPA, the Major League Baseball Players Association, a former pitcher himself for the Montreal Expos, a guy by the name of Steve Rogers. And Mr. Rogers told me that even if the Braves had made up that game that was rained out, it was a game that there's a little bit of a gray area. It was either September 28th or September 29th of 1980. The Braves and Giants had a scheduled game that Sunday, the 28th, I believe. The game was rained out. And when the season came to an end, they weren't required to make it up because neither team was in playoff contention. But Rogers tells me, Steve Rogers with the MLBPA told me that even if the Braves had made that game up, the union still would not have counted it as an extra day of service time. So that's why Robert Jonas started this petition and the GoFundMe to help Coop get that extra day. And also, Coop's not alone. Coop is like, he's got the coolest story I've heard, the most like compelling story. But there are other players out there, even older than Coop, guys in their 70s and 80s who played before 1980 when the requirements were more than 43 days. At that time, prior to 1980, when Coop came to the big leagues, Major League Baseball and the Players Association, their agreement was that in order to receive the minimum pension, a player needed 4 years of service time. So there are guys out there who came up before Coop who have 3.5 years in the big leagues and still don't get a pension. So, Coop is I'm kind of going to bat for Coop, I guess you could say. And now Coop is going to bat for all the other guys who came before him, the guys who paved the way for Coop and all these guys who paved the way for the players of today. And I'm not, don't quote me on this, but if I'm not mistaken, the minimum salary for a major league ball player today is somewhere in the neighborhood of $700,000. And
yeah.
if I'm not too far off on that. So, you know, Coop paved the way for the players of today and the guys who came up before Coop. And, you know, there are a number of former Atlanta Braves who are on the list. You can read about these guys. You can see all the names at bittercupbaseball.com. There are a number of Atlanta Braves who your listeners or your viewers might recognize some of these names. There's Pablo Torrealba. There's Pat Rocket, Craig Robinson, Skip Gwynn, Jimmy Freeman, John Edelman. The list goes on. And then, you know, since the rest of us are here in Detroit or in Metro Detroit, I can tell you there's a bunch of Tigers who fit that description as well. Former Tigers like Les Kane, Steve Grilly. There's Ike Blessed, bless his heart. Ike doesn't even qualify because he came up before 1980 and he only had 36 days with the Tigers. So Ike is SOL as far as the union is concerned. There are others. There's Chuck Scrivener, another former Tiger. All sorts of guys who came up before Ike and before Coop who don't get a pension. So Coop is this is and the Major League Baseball Players Association is arguably the wealthiest labor union in the country with assets somewhere in the neighborhood of $4 billion.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, guys like Coop and Ike Blessed and all the former Tigers and former Braves I mentioned, these guys are still on the outside looking in.
We're talking with Dave Mesery, writer and former big league outfielder Gary Cooper here on the Nedricks. I'm Greg Eno from my gregeno.substack.com. Big Al Beaton's here. Nick Milanovich is here. Let's go to Gary Cooper right now. Coop, obviously nobody could have foreseen this when you made your got called up to the big leagues in 1980. No one could have foreseen that this would be the situation. I know you were just happy to be there. And I'm sure at that age that you were at, you probably figured that, okay, I've got another shot at this. 1980 is not my only crack at this. I mean, I'm sure you probably thought you'd be back to the show. Did you not?
Yes, most definitely. Because, you know, when I got called up and they, you know, coming for, you know, pinch running, defensive stuff, you know, and I figured that was my shot, you know, but I never figured, you know, I'd been in this situation. And come January the 5th, you know, that when contracts come out, I had a AAA contract, you know, and then plus on top of that, they had got rid of Bobby Cox and Joe Torre stepped in, and I guess that changed a lot of things too, you know. So, but I never thought that would have, you know, I did what I was told to do and thought I was one of the favorites, but here I am, you know, fighting to try to get something going. So, you know.
Hey,
you played. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, hey, Coop, tell him how you got the call, how you first got called up to the big leagues with a phone call from Hammer and Hank himself, right?
Right. We was in Jacksonville and taking batting practice, and time I come, we go in the dugout, the lineup there, and I was in the lineup until about 5 minutes before game, and next thing I know, look on there, change lineup, and so I didn't contemplate on it till later on. So I asked him, I said, Eddie Haas, he was the manager. I said, why you took me out of the lineup? He said, I got a call from Hank Aaron to meet the team in Pittsburgh. I said, come on, man, you kidding me? So I got home, you know, and the father told me he had not known it. So I went to the airport, got my ticket, and flew out. So when I got to Pittsburgh, to the Three Rivers Stadium, I ended up in the wrong locker room. I was, you know, excited I was, you know, and that when I ran the Willis Starger, Dale Parker, guys, you know, and you know, it just was a crazy moment that time.
We
I
are
bet.
family, right? At the time, the Pirates were the defending world
Yeah,
champions.
they sure were. Yeah.
And so you
yeah.
roll in. So the Braves call you up. You get into Pittsburgh, and then they put you in the game that very first game, right? Then they put you in late in the game.
Yeah, it was. Bobby Cox told me, he said, "Coop, around the 7th inning, be ready." I said, "Oh my God!" It was like 45,000 people. It was sold out, and I can't see this ball in front of all these people. And okay, the bottom of the ninth, there we go. And Omar Marino, he said he's one of the fastest, in baseball too.
Sure. Yeah.
But I know I was faster, but he hit a pop fly towards me and Dale Murphy, and the ball bounced over both our head, and and I turned around and made a 360. And I caught old Marino trying to stretch the single to the double, and I throw him out. That was the end of the game. So that was one of my regular good highlights. And it was crazy, man. It was, ooh, man.
We're gonna find video. We're gonna find the video that we haven't found it yet. But if there's anybody out there in Pittsburgh watching this, we would like to see video of the Braves versus the Pirates. What was the date, Coop? August 25th, 1980?
Yep, 1980. Yep.
We're looking for some video of that game if anybody out there has it. Braves, Pirates, August 25th, 1980. Coop throws out Omar Moreno at second base to win the game for the Braves.
Wow, what a debut. So many players are known for their big league debuts with their bat, not so much with their glove. And that was what you ended the game by. And you're right, Omar Moreno was very, very fast. And the funny thing, the ironic thing, Coop, I find about this whole situation is because of your speed, you played in the National League at a time where speed was everything. I mean, that league was known because of all the artificial turf surfaces. Of course, Atlanta didn't have one, but all the artificial surfaces in that league at the time, speed was a different kind of baseball than the American League in those days, as you know. A lot of speed. It was all about speed and kind of small ball, if you will. And it's to me, it's even more tragic that you were that kind of a player, a quintessential National League player, if you will. Was there ever a time? I'm curious. Was there ever a time where you requested a trade out of the Braves organization when it was apparent that maybe your future might be better somewhere else, or was that just frowned upon back then?
No, but I would call Dave. I remember telling you that I would vice president of player development, Bill Lucas. When he passed, before that, he told me, he said, "Coop, as long as I'm part of this organization, you're gonna be in the major league until I depart." And I never thought about, I'm homegrown, might as well say homegrown from Savannah, Georgia, and I never really thought about, asking for a trade, and really I never thought I'd been sent back, to the minors during that time, but it happened. So, I wish I did.
And Coop, when you played for the Braves, the owner was none other than Ted Turner, right?
My man.
Right? And what did Ted tell you? What do you remember Ted Turner telling you back then?
Told me, as long as he's owner of Atlanta, I ain't got nothing to worry about. And somehow he got out the picture, and I haven't heard from him, anything, but I would say I was always one of the favorite players. So, but every time I go to a game, I get recognized and whatever, and things like that, but I just hoping they can give me another shot at it.
Yeah, that sure would be nice.
When you played in the minors in the Braves system, you came straight from AA, right, to the big league club, and was Braves manager Brian Snitker? He was your teammate in AA, wasn't he?
Oh, Bino, yes sir.
Bino, huh?
Yeah, we share rooms, rooms together, and he stayed at my house in Savannah for a little while, and that was my man. Good people.
Hey, Coop,
we're talking with Dave.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I want to bring Big Al and Dave real quick. We're talking with Dave Mesery and Gary Cooper here on the Knee Jerks. I'm Greg Eno from GregEno.substack.com. Big Al Beaton is here. Nick Milanovich as well. But let's bring Big Al in. What you got for these guys?
Yeah, this is more for Dave. Since you've started this media blitz and taking up the case for these players, has there been any kind of response from Major League Baseball, the teams involved, or the MLBPA, or are they saying anything, or are they just giving excuses? Where's the status right now?
Well, the Braves, of course, defer comment to Major League Baseball and the Players Association. Both Major League Baseball and the Players Association have not commented other than to tell me from my story in Anscape that even if the Braves and the Giants had made up that rainout, the union still would not have counted that as a 43rd day of service time. But the MLBPA is under no legal obligation to advocate for alumni, because right now they're no longer union members; they're alumni. So there's the organization in Colorado Springs, the Major League Baseball Players Alumni Association, and I know Coop's been in touch with them. I should add, hey, before I forget, Coop, tell us. So you were with the Braves through the end of the regular season in 1980, and on that final day of the season, you and the Braves were in Cincinnati taking on the Reds. And I was looking at the box score for that game. You got in the game late, and then with 2 out in the 9th inning, I think the Reds were up 1-0. Dale Murphy came up to bat, and you were in the on-deck circle. What happened next?
That was the last time I've been in the on-deck circle in the show, and I was ready to take me a good swing, but it never happened. And after that, that was it.
Yeah, Dale Murphy struck out to end the game. That ended the season, and you couldn't have known it at the time, but that was the end of Gary Cooper's major league career, and it came to an end there at Riverfront Stadium in Cincinnati.
Yep, that's what it was, And
Coop, tell us about after the Braves. Take us through the rest of your professional career. When did it end? How did it end? And did you try to stay in the game after you stopped playing?
When I went back, played in '81 with the Durham Bulls. It's a nice place to stay in Durham, North Carolina, and and had a pretty good season. And I thought I'd get a shot, but after that, I went to spring training part of the year, and it wasn't no better. So I said, well, I ain't got nothing else to prove. I did what I'm supposed to do, and when you ain't got a mouthpiece to back you up,
right.
And so I just, let it go, and life was up and down, and and I just thank God to still have a good peace of mind, and just keep on trucking, and like it is what it is, and I thank God I was able to play professional baseball. It was my dream, and so ain't too many people can say that. So I'm thankful, very thankful.
What did you do, Coop, after baseball? What kind of roles or jobs did you have? What did you do how did you spend your time after baseball?
Well, working here and there, and later on in life, I got with Mr. Jonas, and I was working with him for like about over 10 years. And he was, he took me under his wing, and and couldn't ask for a better man. And I thank him and his family.
Very nice. We're talking with Dave Mesery and Gary Cooper here in the Knee Jerks. I'm Greg Eno from gregeno.substack.com. You just heard from Big Al. Al Beaton, let's bring in Nick Milanovich now. What you got for Dave and or Gary?
Yeah, this question is for Gary. It's kind of a little bit of a follow-up to what Greg was asking. Like, after you hung it up as a player, did you ever consider going into coaching at all?
Yeah,
I
tried to, reach out, but I'm not a, Robert keeps telling me, man, you need your phone, and I wasn't a phone person. I kind of shied away from it. I got kind of, say, not don't give a darn, but wasn't interested. I had a lot of people ask me, "Won't you do it?" But I did coach a little league baseball team, and we won everything. And I took the team to when it was Fulton County Stadium. Then I did that, and after that, and I just never thought about it no more. But I have a lot of people be asking me about it, but you got to have the right sponsor and everything, and but like I say, it's never too late though. I'm still, interested, so hopefully one day somebody asks me again.
Maybe you can teach some of these guys how to steal bases, because I'm tired of the strikeouts and the home runs. It's just feast or famine baseball these days.
Right, and I, that's why I, wouldn't mind, being a, base running coach, whatever, because I was pretty good on the bases, and but I didn't never, I guess it was for my speed, and I just took off, ball catching, because I didn't have no sign. It just whatever the chance I get, go. I didn't have a sign.
Okay, so I was going to ask you that. So Bobby Cox kind of gave you the green light whenever you were on first base. You could steal on your own volition. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, he said, "Coop, you on your own." So
okay.
don't look for no sign. Just do what you do. And that's what I did. And I one story there I forgot to tell you, but against Cincinnati, Joe Morgan with the big red machine.
Uh-huh.
I should have been 3 for 3, but I ran and got thrown on Johnny Bench. But I had a pop slide and my foot came off the bag and Joe Morgan tagged me out.
Oh,
that was another moment. Yeah, that was another moment, But Johnny Bench said, "I told you I was gonna get you."
Oh man.
Yeah, that slipped me, Dave. I meant to tell you about that one, but that slipped my mind. But as we talk, come back to me, and other than that, man, it was a blast, But,
I want to follow up on Nick's question, because we've talked about this before on this program about the state of baseball today and how it's so reliant, it seems like, on the home run and not as much on moving the runners along with hit and run and stealing bases and so forth. What do you think of today's game? I mean, to that point, you were obviously a guy who built his game on speed and running and so forth, and you played, as I said, in the National League at a time where hitting and running and space stealing was at a premium. What do you think of today's game? And to Nick's point about there being so much reliance on the power games today?
I've been stealing bases and watching people run. That's the most exciting thing about baseball to me, and because when I played, people love to see me get on base, and if I hit a ball in the gap or whatever, like to see me run, and see like now they take the fun out the game, everything on home runs, but ain't nothing like stealing the base, and because I should be dirty from the first inning on to the last, and that was my thing, getting on base. That psyched the crowd,
Right.
Psyched the crowd,
yeah.
More exciting, but now it's not, you don't see that many guys, still base. When you look at
right.
them, they take the lead off first now.
Yeah.
I was watching the Mets in Tampa Bay, and some guys have about 1 or 2 feet off the bag, but I was on the edge of the infield grass. You throw over there, you get me, you're not, but if you don't, I'm gone. That's what's exciting about the game.
We're talking with Dave Mesery, writer and extraordinaire, and Gary Cooper, former big league ball player here on the Knee Jerks. I'm Greg Eno from my gregeno.substack.com blog, and you just heard Nick Milanovich, and you, of course, have already heard Big Al Bean. I want to go to Dave Mesery here real quick. Dave, are you surprised at how this has taken off? I mean, I know you when you get into a story like this, because I've known you for, about 18, 19 years now. I know when you get I know you enough to know that when you get your meat hooks on a story, you kind of get into that mode where that's all you can really focus on. Did you ever think that it was going to take off the way it has, or no?
I certainly hoped so. But I think, after my story first appeared at Anscape.com, that's when the other media outlets started to take notice in Georgia. There was Georgia Public Broadcasting, WJCL, WTOC. Next thing you know, Coop's on CNN. So we didn't really see that coming. But, when like I said, I first heard about Coop from Sabre researcher Rod Nelson out in Colorado Springs. And at the time, I had a full-time day job. And so I was just tinkering with the story at nights and on the weekends. And it took me quite a while to finally finish the story, like well over a year before I finally finished it. But I'm certainly glad I did. And, we owe a debt of gratitude to an attorney here in Metro Detroit by the name of Kevin Campbell. Kevin represented Coop pro bono in his appeals to the players union. But as everyone knows by now, Mr. Campbell's appeals to the MLBPA on behalf of Coop were denied. And so that's why Mr. Jonas down there in Savannah started this petition. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the petition again. There is a petition at change.org. If you just search for Gary Cooper Atlanta Braves at change.org, you'll find a petition with around 17,000 signatures of people around the country who are urging the Atlanta Braves to consider adding Coop to either to their roster or to their coaching staff for just one game of the 2024 baseball season, in which case he could finally collect that pension that that he missed out on by one day all those years ago. And also, Mr. Jonas has a GoFundMe for Coop as well, and you can find that just by searching for Gary Cooper Atlanta Braves at GoFundMe.com.
Yeah, and maybe I'm sure Al will include those links in the show notes as well. And let's bring Big Al in. What you got for Gary Cooper?
This is for Gary. Everybody who ever played baseball has that dream of playing in the big leagues. Can you kind of give us an idea? What is there a culture shock from moving from the minor leagues to the big leagues? Is it real? It seems like you go from riding buses to flying first class. Can you tell us a little bit about the transition it took to make that to get into the big leagues?
Yes, it was. Like I say, it was easy to get there, hard to stay. But in the minors, you got to go through the long bus rides and showers ain't working, and and lights is poor, and you got to go through the ringer, and you go from you go to triple A. I mean, from single, rookie ball, single A, double A, triple A, and it was pretty good for me because I never, as far as I got was double A. Then I got the chance to play at home for 3 years in Savannah. Then from Savannah to Atlanta, that was huge for me, Because, the minors was good to me, I enjoyed it, and we went to some good places, and, had no trouble, but it's nothing like going to the big show, and
oh yeah,
that's the thing, and I never thought, I always wanted to play Major League Baseball, and like you say, dreams do come true, and I can say mine did came true, and I'm grateful for it,
I want to touch on something that Dave mentioned at the top of the discussion, which is Coop's advocacy, if you will, for these other players that are kind of in the same boat as he is. And I'm not sure who wants to take this question, whether it's Dave or Gary, both of you. Kind of talk about that advocacy, because I think that's interesting. Because even we're talking with Gary now, and Gary's story is clearly the one that's picking up steam. But can you guys kind of touch on these other players now who are in the same boat who Gary is advocating for, and what their situation is?
What do you say, Coop?
You have that, Dave?
Oh man, well I tell you, by going Gary is a brave man, and he's I made a playlist a few months ago. I just found a bunch of pop music and like R&B music from the late 70s and early 80s, from the time that Coop was playing professional baseball. And if anyone wants the link, hit me up. I'll give you a link. It's on Spotify. It's on Apple Music. There's even a YouTube link with all the videos to these songs. One of those songs is "He's So Shy" by the Pointer Sisters.
Mhm.
You know, and Mr. Cooper at times, you know, Gary can be a little shy, and that's well, he's really brave going public with his story now, and I just like to think that by going public with his story, it'll help to shed light on the plight of these other men who played in the big leagues before Coop, before 1980, when you needed to have 4 years of service time to qualify for a pension. And there are still some 500 men who played Major League Baseball who are still living, who played prior to 1980, who still don't receive a pension. Some of them do get, I think most of them get a stipend every year from the union, but they still don't get a proper pension. And again, that the Major League Baseball Players Association, the union, is perhaps the wealthiest labor union in the country with assets of some $4 billion. And, you know, I wear a lot of hats in my life, but I'm going to put a hat on right now. This is my hat from the Baseball Reliquary. I got this hat out in Pasadena, California a few years ago when they invited me out. The Baseball Reliquary, for folks who aren't familiar with it, they kind of fashioned themselves as the People's Hall of Fame. It's a place where baseball figures who might never make it into the hallowed halls of Cooperstown can still be enshrined, inducted into they call it the Shrine of the Eternals. Guys like Jim Bouton and Doc Ellis, all these colorful characters of baseball who may not, you know, make it into the Hall of Fame, but I just sent in my ballot just a few days ago. I cast my vote. I cast my vote this year for former Detroit Tiger Ron LaFleur, who I grew up just a few blocks away from. I know Coop remembers Ron LaFleur. He stole a lot of bases back in 1980, and I think that, you know, if Coop's story keeps getting out there and keeps shedding light on the plight of these other major leaguers who don't collect a pension, that, you know, maybe next year at this time we'll see Gary Cooper's name on the ballot to get inducted into the Baseball Reliquary. Here's my ballot right here, Coop. I hope to see your name on the ballot next year, because as far as I'm concerned, you belong in the Shrine of the Eternals, brother.
Thank you, my man. Appreciate it.
Let's squeeze another one out of Nick Milanovich if we can. Nick, what you got?
Couple questions. One is kind of on the lighter side for Gary. Is like, what were your favorite players growing up? Who were your favorite baseball players? Just curious.
Man, that's easy. The guy used to have to negotiate my contract with every year.
Hank Aaron, Hammer and Hank. So after
Hammer.
Hank Aaron,
that
Hank
was
retired, right?
Yeah,
That's a good one.
That was, oh man, you had to come in there right with Mr. Aaron. He didn't play because, for example, me and his son was in the organization together, and I see when he, I guess he had to do what he had to do. He cut his son, so I said, well, Gary, you know what you got to do. You got to tighten up. Be in that line too, but but he was my favorite. Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
How about that? Yeah. After Hank Aaron retired from playing baseball, then he went to work in the Braves front office, and that's who he called Coop up to the show. And then when he got there, he had to negotiate with Hammer and Hank on the contract.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that had to be weird.
Man, he wasn't easy. But he was
You got another one, Nick?
Yeah, well, I was thinking of one a little bit more related to the topic at hand was with Gary's case and with like any of these other the former MLB players. Like, are you encountering any kind of like pushback? I don't mean like the rejections or like the no answers from Major League Baseball or from the Players Association, but like any actual backlash to all of this.
You talking to me?
Like, more. I guess it's a little more for Dave, but either one of you guys actually.
Dave, you handle that, Dave.
Oh, Coop. Well, I do know, Coop. There is a former Braves pitcher, Greg McMichael, is the I think he handles alumni relations for the Braves, and as I understand it, he's been really good about this and in touch with Coop and everything. So it's a delicate issue, but we're putting it out there. These guys aren't getting any younger. Coop's 67. The average age of so I think I mentioned the website earlier. There's a website called bittercupbaseball.com, which is run by a researcher out in Seattle by the name of Max Efkin. I hope I'm pronouncing Max's name right. Max has worked over the years with author Doug Gladstone. Doug literally wrote the book on this stuff. It's called Bitter Cup of Baseball, and and that goes into great detail about the players who don't receive a pension, who in the major leagues. I think we got issues, guys. Can you still hear me okay?
Yeah, consider you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so at the website run by Max Efkin, bittercupbaseball.com, you can see the average age of these ball players, I believe, is 77 years old. There are guys in their 70s, 80s, 90s. I think one guy is even 100 years old who played prior to 1980. Yeah, still does not collect a pension. And we lose these guys every so often. Every few months, someone passes away and they'll never receive a proper pension. So Coop's going to bat for those guys. And if you're interested, again, the book, the guy who literally wrote the book on this stuff, Doug Gladstone, Bitter Cup of Baseball, and he works with Max Efkin at bittercupbaseball.com, and you can see all the names of all the other players who made it to the show but are unable to collect a pension from the richest labor union in America.
And you said Doug Gladstone is the guy in Seattle?
No, that's Max Efkin is in Seattle. I think Doug is in New York. So Doug is the granddaddy of this whole movement, and Max is a researcher who works in conjunction with Doug. Max is based in Seattle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
EFFGEN. You can find Max on Twitter and at bittercupbaseball.com.
Very good. Very good. You know what?
Cool.
It's funny you say Doug Gladstone because I'm that name, Dave, rang a bell. And guess what? I just Googled this, Al. Back in 2011, you and I talked to Doug on the show. We interviewed him about a bitter cup of coffee. Because as soon as Dave mentioned the name, I said, boy, that sounds familiar. And sure enough, when you do the show for 15 years, this is bound to happen. Doug Gladstone came on the show in 2011 in October and talked with us about his book. So what goes around comes around, right? I mean,
that's man.
Fantastic. Good stuff.
Yeah, I think that's when the book first came out. And I would like to say one other thing. I wouldn't know the Gary Cooper story. None of us would know the Gary Cooper story if it weren't for Robert Jonas in Savannah, Georgia, and Sabre researcher Rod Nelson, who first brought the story to my attention. So hats off to those guys, and hats off to Gary Cooper and Kimi Jones down there in Savannah, fellas.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thanks so much, guys, both of you, for coming on to the show and sharing the story. And I know that you've been kind of on this media blitz, so we appreciate you taking the time out to talk to us here in Detroit. And Coop, just know that you've got a brother in arms in a way. I know that Dave mentioned Ike Blessett, maybe not in the same boat necessarily, strictly the same boat as you are, but Ike is a Detroiter, and he's near and dear to the folks here in this area, and his story is very similar to yours. And I know you know who Ike is, and I'm sure Dave has clued you in about him and everything. And so this story of yours, I can guarantee you, is going to strike a chord with our audience, which is predominantly Detroit folks. And we appreciate you doing this, and all the best of luck to you, my friend. And let's hope that everybody does the right thing here. Okay.
Okay. I appreciate you all having me. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for coming on. Take care. We'll see you.
Thank you.
Bye.
That was fascinating, guys.
Oh,
Absolutely. You don't get to see that part of baseball that often.
Yeah.
So
you tend to forget about the guys who got left behind, and essentially they got left behind. That's awful.
Yeah, and I really like the aspect of the story where Gary is advocating, helping to advocate for these other players who are in the same boat, because it's sometimes you get so focused on your own situation that you kind of, everybody else is kind of just gets lost in the shuffle. But he's, Dave, is made it a point to say, no, he's out there advocating. He's hoping that this is going to lead to other things for these other players. And I was fascinated by how many other players are in this boat.
Yeah.
And it's too bad because, like Dave says, I know that's not strictly a MLBPA thing anymore because these are alumni now. I get it. But I just hope that somebody does the right thing here, whether it's the Braves or whoever, brings Gary on board. And we should also mention that he being on a roster for one day does not mean he has to appear in a game, by the way. He all he has to do is suit up, sign a contract, suit up, be on the bench the whole game. He doesn't even have to get in the game. Okay, so it's not like the Braves have to play him at age 67. All he has to do is be officially on the roster. Maybe after, I don't know. It's I hope that it works out for him because it sounds like that this is just an injustice that should be rectified.
Exactly. And
it's such I would say, such an insignificant thing for Major League Baseball to do.
Right.
I mean, they often do these like one-day contracts for retiring players. They bring them back.
Right.
And like, I'll retire as a Brave kind of thing.
Right, exactly.
It's like, it shouldn't be a big deal, I would think.
Right. And those guys don't need the money, that's for sure. That's for damn sure.
That's right. It's just, what do you call it? Not custom, but forget, I can't think of the word, but it's a gesture.
For those who don't know, who have not followed the show as closely as we have by doing it, Dave Mesery is the kind of an author who, this is just right up his alley. It does not surprise me that of all the people I know that wrote about this, it was Dave, because this is the kind of story that he somehow digs up, finds out about, and it's like a dog in a pork chop when he gets.
Yeah, he's a guy you want on your side.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. So he's been tirelessly promoting this. Dave has, and so I wish him a lot of luck. And I know he's not doing it for himself; he's doing it for Gary, and I hope that Gary can benefit. So good stuff there, and appreciate those guys taking time out to talk to us.
All right. With that, Greg, I think it's time for the birthday game as we jump right into the interview. So
absolutely,
floor is yours.
Well, I tell you what. This, well, first of all, we're going to play a game we like to call Whose Birthday Is It? Maestro. Everybody knows how we play this game by now. I'll give Al and Nick a clue or two or three of an individual whose birthday it is in the world of baseball. And if those, in the world of sports, I should say, and if those guys can get the person's name within the first two clues, tonight they'll receive a pit and a pendulum. So...
All right, are we talking the Edgar Allan Poe thing? Or are we talking the Roger Corman movie? Or yeah,
or an
whatever you
and a pendulum?
Yeah.
What did he say?
I said an actual pit and an actual pendulum.
Right, yes. Exactly. That's what this is. This person, guys, made his name in the world of hockey. I will say that he was born in this state in 1972. He's 52 years old today. He was a goaltender, I will tell you that, and is in the Hockey Hall of Fame. And I think I'm going to stop there. I'm not going to go. I think I'll stop there. Hall of Fame goalie, born in 1972.
Born in 72.
Martin Brodeur.
Martin Brodeur, very good.
Wow. Oh, my goodness.
Very
Nick, I think that's the first time Nick's gotten one on the first question.
That's great. Yes.
Wow.
Absolutely. Marty Brodeur is 52 years old. Good for Marty. Not so good for Red Wings fans in the 1995 finals when he and the Devils shut the Red Wings down. Marty's dad, by the way, was a renowned hockey photographer. I've got a book of his dad's, a coffee table book, about goalies. And all it is just filled with full color photographs. Martin's dad was a photographer for the Canadians. And so it's filled with photos of goaltenders from not just the Canadians, but from visiting teams playing in the Forum. Beautiful, just gorgeous full color shots from the 60s and 70s, and just a great book. And that's so Martin's dad is pretty renowned too as far as hockey photographers go. But yeah, Marty's 52. He played until he was 43, believe it or not.
Mhm.
Marty did. So good job, Nick. That was a good one. That's impressive.
I am impressed.
Yeah, good. Way to go.
Yeah, you should be proud. All right, with that, since we have our interview out of the way, we have the birthday game out of the way, and we're going, obviously at the end of the show we will be doing our jerk of the week. But between all that, we got some sports to discuss, specifically almost all Tigers and Lions this week. It really is the only two teams right now making news. The Pistons have yet to hire a president of basketball operations. Supposedly there's interviewing going on, and they're waiting for more playoff teams to get knocked out of the NBA playoffs. And it's really right now a dead time for the Wings. I believe I really don't know what's going on with the Wings right now, other than probably contract negotiations. So let's start with the Detroit Tigers, guys, because they made huge news today on new uniforms. I don't know about you guys, but how you feel about this. But today the Tigers introduced their version of the City Connect uniform and cap. Essentially, it has Motor City and across the chest. It's dark blue, has a lot of automobile motif, like tire treads, things like that. It has on the sleeve, it has the one for Woodward on it, the Woodward sign, which things like that. And obviously, the cap doesn't. It says, I believe, Detroit across it, not the Old English D. This is going to be something that is worn this Friday and Saturday, and then after this weekend, it'll be worn at every Friday night home game. So, as someone who never thought they would see the Tigers for anything other than home whites and road grays, and specifically of the Old English D, I'll start with you, Greg. Where do you fall on the Detroit Tigers having a regular alternate uniform? And what do you think of the uniform?
I don't like these alternate uniforms. I'm a get off my lawn guy when it comes to uniforms. I'm a traditionalist. I thought I saw the worst of uniforms when I lived through the 1990s, when those uniforms in all sports were just horrific. That's when you had those weird Buffalo Sabres uniforms, weird Islanders uniforms, weird NBA uniforms. The whole uniform universe in the 90s was just awful. And I lived through that, and now all I see now are in the NBA. The NBA is probably the worst offender of all of them all, with all their uniforms. It's all about money. It's all about more merch. It's all about putting these jerseys in shops and having people buy them, and something else for people to spend their money on, and people will. And they usually, these uniforms that we're talking about now, these City Connect things, have it's ironic they call them City Connect, because rarely do they really connect anything to the city. They're god awful. They're usually not the same color scheme as the team normally wears.
No orange in this at all.
I just don't. It's all for money, and it's all just for an excuse to sell something else. I don't like it. I think it's hokey, and they're not all that attractive. And I've seen some really bad ones, really bad ones. This one isn't too bad. I mean, as far as the City Connect jerseys go, I was fearing something a lot worse than what they unveiled. But I'm okay with the Tigres. When they give a nod to the Hispanic thing with they put Tigres. I'm okay with that. I'm okay when they wear the Detroit Stars old Negro League jerseys, or a nod to the Negro Leagues. I'm fine with that. But these are just strictly, and those are at least a nod to something. These are strictly for marketing purposes and nothing else.
Nick, where do you fall on all this?
I'm kind of with Greg on it. I actually find the uniforms kind of ugly. I think tire treads on them is perfect. If you look at the Tigers hitters, I think it's appropriate. Just like the tire treads you would see on the Coyote in a Roadrunner cartoon. And honestly, the one symbol that makes this the Detroit Tigers is missing, and that's the D. That's it's got to be somewhere. That's the Tigers brand. It's been a symbol for 120 freaking years.
Right.
And why remove it to say Motor City or to say Detroit? It looks like something, let's say, a rapper would wear in a performance. It doesn't look like it's Detroit Tigers. And I think that's the one. If there's anything that's the fail on that one, it's not having that D somewhere on that uniform. I'm kind of tired of the City Connect and all these kind of uniform kind of like going through different uniforms, not just the one home and one away. Like when I was watching the Pistons this past season, they would be changing uniforms all the time. And I actually found it harder to figure out which team was which, because you can't identify them with, like here's the white Pistons home uniform, here's the blue Pistons away uniforms. Like, which team is this? And I have to take a really damn hard look to figure out who's who. It's actually not that helpful when you're watching a game. Yeah. And so I think it's a waste of time, but yeah, I know why they're doing it too. It's jersey merchandise sales. Yeah. Like, I don't know what else it could be. So
yeah, and I guess the other thing to remember is that oftentimes these jerseys aren't aimed to sell to our age group, aka old people. No, they're trying to sell to teenagers and 20-somethings. No, but I agree. I think they're kind of ugly. They look like I wore softball uniforms, but that's what it reminds me when I see these. Especially all the same dark color type stuff. It reminds me of stuff I wore when I played softball 30 years ago. It's and I think Nick nailed it. Where is the D? And the Motor City, when I saw it, and with the tire treads, I thought of those Piston jerseys too, because the Pistons have something very, very similar they wear. So and we'll get into what the Lions did later in the show, because that's the other uniform we have to talk about. But I like what the Lions did far more than what the Tigers are doing right now. I just think but you make a good point though, Greg. I think uniforms in general are one, a pure cash grab, and two, Major League Baseball has a major issue anyway with the quality. Seems like every other time I see Riley Green on television, he's got completely torn up pants because they're so badly made.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. That's one of the first things I noticed on opening day was how small the names were on the back. Of the
nameplate, exactly.
And I thought that it was just a Tigers thing. And I remember I went on Twitter and I said, "Is anybody else noticing how cheap these things look?" And somebody said it's all across the board. All big league teams are doing it because MLB moved the MLB logo to I guess below the collar, and in order to make room for that, they had to have these little nameplates, and it makes the jerseys, to me, look like they're cheap knockoffs you buy at the gas station. They look so hokey. It's amazing how just a smaller nameplate can make a uniform look amateurish, minor leaguish, and they're just awful. You mentioned the Riley Green, the pants ripping. That's one thing, but just the aesthetics of those tiny nameplates just make every uniform in the big leagues look like not big league uniforms. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You would think they mock up one of these and say, "Oh, that looks terrible," afterwards.
Right.
And
Nick, we need to get you on quality control with Major League Baseball. Good Lord, you would think someone would have done that.
Hey, in my professional life, I would make prototypes of products and put it up in front of people and say, "What do you think?
Yeah.
What does this look like?"
Yeah.
And if people hated it, you don't put it out on the market.
Right.
But so yeah, I mean, and I think it was the Orioles that were had these pants that were so thin and transparent that they were actually really transparent of all things. Yeah. So it was to an awkward extent.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I'm guessing they were probably thin too, as well. Why don't we just go back to those the White Sox big collars and shorts era? Remember that?
Of course.
I mean, nobody steals anymore, so what does it matter? Nobody's going to slide.
Right.
That was ahead of its time by 40 years.
I thought I had forgotten about those ugly goddamn things, and Nick brings them back in my memory. Thank you, Nick. Good Lord. Oh, God. Yeah. say what you will about Vivek, but those uniforms were not one of his good ideas. So, all right. With that, let's stay on the off the field issues going on with the Tigers, even though this big one that's going on right now. And I'll talk to Nick about what's going on in Seattle when it comes to what's going on with Bally, but this is becoming big news, and it's pretty much out of the Tigers' control. And that is, if you have Comcast, aka Xfinity, as your cable company, you no longer get to watch the Tigers because they did not come to a carriage agreement with Bally Sports, aka Diamond Sports Group, aka Sinclair. There's 18 regional Bally Sports networks. Comcast/Infinity could not come to a new carrier agreement with them, so the Bally RSNs went dark on Xfinity last Tuesday, and there's no sign of resolution with Diamond Sports Group. There are carriage agreements with Charter, aka what the hell is Charter's name? I have Charter, Spectrum, Charter Spectrum, and DirecTV, but there's pretty much no sign of any kind of agreement coming close with Comcast. And the Tigers when the Tigers were asked about the stalemate between their rights holders and the broadcaster, the Tigers stated there is nothing they can do as they don't own the broadcast rights. They sold them to Bally Sports. So, and that essentially puts fans in a very bad position right now if they want to watch the Tigers and they live in a Comcast area. I don't know about you guys. Like, one, I have Spectrum, but I also cut the cord years ago, so I can kind of tell you what I do to watch the Tigers. But the thing is, we'll see how long this goes, or if it ever gets settled, because this can then affect Red Wings and Pistons broadcasts in the fall. Greg, are you? Who is your cable provider? Is this something you have to deal with, or are you in a safe zone, so to speak, when it comes to your cable provider?
Yeah, we're with DirecTV, so we're okay.
Yeah.
But I really feel for those folks who this does affect. And, I saw somebody on Twitter say that they were watching the replay of a game that they had missed earlier on Xfinity, and literally right at midnight,
yeah,
it just cut off. That's
exactly what happened.
Just pulled the plug right at midnight, and with some weird screen that came on that said whatever it said. And, this whole thing is just, I can't believe we're here. I can't believe in the 21st century we're here, where fans, it shouldn't be this hard for fans to see their the local big league team play baseball. It shouldn't. It should not be that difficult. And this is, it's easy to want to blame Rob Manfred because he's the commissioner, and I'm sure there's probably other people to blame.
Oh, Major League Baseball's got to be livid about this.
But between the uniforms and this Bally thing and the quality of the umpiring, which is another thing we should get into, the quality of the umpiring, especially with balls and strikes, is just been. It's not just Angel Hernandez anymore, guys. It's like a lot of these guys now behind the plate are having trouble getting the balls and strikes right. Between that and there's so many things going on that it's just not a good look, and this Bally thing, there's a lot of folks that this impacts, and these are people who live and die with the team. They want to watch them every night, and they got to scramble just to find the freaking game, and you mentioned it. I think Al, you mentioned it earlier about the older. How these uniforms are not. We're not the audience for the older uniforms. That's newer uniforms. That's true. Yeah. But there are a lot of folks who are longtime Tigers fans, and your dad is a good example. Longtime Rays fan down in Tampa. Yeah. And to make these older people, these boomers, I hate to use that term, but these boomers, who can barely, and I'm not trying to be funny here, who can barely find their team on TV as it is.
Yeah.
I'm really, truly. And now you're going to make them hunt around. They may not have a son or daughter they can lean on to say, help me find my Rays, help me find my help me find my Cubs, whatever. They don't have that. And you're expecting these older fans to navigate through all these streaming services, and they can barely, use a cell phone. And I'm not trying to be funny. I mean, so it's just really, it's too bad. It's too bad.
Yeah, and just to kind of let the people know what my dad does to watch the Rays, I have to fly to Florida. Well, it's one of the reasons I fly to Florida to see him, but I try to time my trips to Florida so I can get down there. And he uses, I set him up with Bally Sports Plus because we cut the cord. They were paying a stupid amount of money to Spectrum. So we cut the cord. I set, and obviously just kept Spectrum for internet. I set him up with direct YouTube television. The issue is that, which works great. It's a great cable replacement. I use it here at home, but they don't have any RSNs. YouTube TV is great for pretty much every sport, especially football and basketball, because they have all the channels. But when it comes to baseball and you want to watch your home team, they don't carry any RSNs, and they probably never will. So with him, I had to set up Bally Sports Plus, an app on his Roku. And I went with Roku 1 because Roku is a very, very simple interface. 80's 84. So if he needed something fairly simple to figure out. So essentially there's a tile for YouTube TV and there's a tile for Bally Sports Plus. And so far, so good. Bally Sports Plus has worked pretty well for him. And like I said, I have not got any phone calls saying, help me fix this or do this. It has worked for them. But the thing is, though, it's a huge pain. I literally have to sign it, get it set up for him. Then I have to cancel it in September, so he's not paying for it all year round. That's $20 when you're a retiree. It adds up,
right?
And it's but again, like you said, my dad is in a position where I can help him do this. But as you said, Greg, there's a lot of people out there who are very technically illiterate, and they don't have that kind of help that a younger person can give them. And they are literally SOL, shit out of luck, not Sam Old Lions. So it's, it's the younger generation can figure this stuff out. You nailed it when said it's the older generation that is causing them, because they're the ones who are very still into having cable television, not cutting the cord. Nick, what's the status of all this out in the Pacific Northwest?
I can only speak for myself. Mm-hmm. I don't actually have cable TV at all. I get everything.
Yeah.
I cut the cord like more than 20 years ago on television. Mm-hmm. And so I have internet and streaming. And if I want to watch sports, I just make sure my browser has a lot of ad blockers when I go onto these websites. So that's how I do it, and I get around it.
I actually find myself doing the same thing. Yeah.
And what's funny is I watched the Detroit Lions game a few years ago, and the announcers were speaking in Serbian, which was hilarious. I will watch them again in Serbian before I listen to some of these American announcers that drone on and color analyze and all this other stuff. Yeah. So that's the way I get around it, because I it's funny because I listen to you guys and I listen to other people on social media talk about trying to get to watch a Tigers game. And I left Michigan 30 years ago, where I would listen to Ernie Harwell if I wanted to hear it on the radio. And it's George and Al on, Channel 4.
Yeah, once or twice a week.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I remember. It sounds like this thing is, I think, whatever you guys do nowadays and whatever the MLB created for their broadcasting rights is, I can't think of it being anything other than just calling it a clusterfuck. I mean, I don't know what else to call it. It sounds like a mess.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
I mean,
but I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, you go back to the NFL as the model professional sports league, trying to get you access to the games. And what does that do? It builds your following and it gets you watching the games. And it's easy as hell to watch a football game. But it sounds like a nightmare to watch a stupid baseball game.
Yeah.
It's just so complicated. For what reason? And I think it's hurting the other sports, to be honest. So,
because I was going to say, I'm with Nick. Well, I used to be kind of semi-legal. I used to have, I get MLB.TV, the out-of-market package for free from my phone provider, T-Mobile. And then I would run a VPN to essentially hide my location and say I'm in Chicago or something, and it would allow me to watch a Tiger game. Well, MLB has caught on to that. You can't get, at least not with the VPN I have. I can't do that anymore. Every time I've tried it over the past year and a half, it hasn't worked. So what I ended up doing, I've done what Nick does, where there's certain sites you know where to go and just have your ad blocker ready to go, maybe your antivirus. But right now I have the game on right next to me here. I got the Tiger game playing. It's on Bally Sports Detroit, and there is an app called SportsFire.tv, and it works on both the Amazon Fire Stick, and it also works on Android TV boxes. And it's essentially you have to download an APK. You can't get it off the Google Play Store or the Amazon Store when it comes to an app. You have to go to the website. So that means installing a browser and doing kind of stuff that a lot of people don't want to do. But it's the sort of app that allowed me to watch UFC Saturday night and not pay $70, so to speak, even though I'm not a UFC fan. But that's the sort of stuff people are resorting to is piracy, because I'm already paying enough for streaming. I really don't have an urge to pay another $20 on top of that for Bally Sports Plus, which is not the best service anyway. And the fact that I'm already paying for numerous streaming services, and I'm up to here with subscriptions. So I am going. I don't want to give Bally Sports money anymore. That's essentially what it comes down to. So I'm with Nick, but at least Nick, we're tech savvy enough that we're able to do this. There's a lot, if you listen to sports talk radio at all, God help you, there is a large segment of the population that is completely intimidated by just using an app, let alone doing the things I'm doing, like VPNs and APKs and pirated apps, and going to sites like Sports Surge and Sports East and NBA Byte and whatever. So, yeah, it's you nailed it. When the NFL has it on lock when it comes to, for the most part, their programming. Now they have the Amazon Prime Thursday night, and they do have the occasional. They're probably going to have a Peacock game on the playoffs, things like that. But probably about 90% of the programming is free over the air. So you would hope that maybe the other, especially with the so-called cable bubble bursting, where it really starts like it's looking to, the money bubble is going to burst. You would think that maybe some of these leagues, Nick, would follow the NFL's league and say, maybe we need to get back on over-the-air television, be it locally, nationally, or whatever, but again, expose the game to more people for free.
Right. I think I remember what do you call it? What's his name? Phoenix Suns owner.
Yeah.
Ishbia. I think
Matt Ishbia.
The Phoenix fans had an issue with getting the Suns games this past season. Yeah. And I forget the details of it, but what Ishbia, I think I'll give him credit for this. He sent for free some sort of like antenna for people's homes so they could get Suns games. So they could actually access and watch Suns games, which apparently it doesn't like cause any broadcasting licensing issues or not. But I thought that was brilliant. Let's build a fan base and let's keep a fan base going. Although if it were the Pistons and nobody could watch their games, they might be better off than seeing that garbage. Yeah. But I won't go there. But honestly,
just to follow up on that real quick, Nick, when you brought up the Pistons, it's funny that in April there was a handful of days where all three teams here in Detroit were playing. The Tigers, the Red Wings, and the Pistons were all playing on the same night, and the Pistons got relegated to over-the-air television. Their game got put on Channel 20 here in Detroit, which is funny thinking that Bally kept two of the teams, yet the team that probably got more exposure was the one that Bally didn't want in the Pistons. That's funny.
It doesn't surprise me at all, to be honest. It's like, I mean, that's the part of the thing. If you're like running a business or like selling something, you want to make it as easy for your buyers to buy from you as possible. Yeah. You don't want to make it hard. I think this broadcasting has kind of made it hard. And baseball specifically to me is one of the most boring TV sports. I think golf is worse, but I think it's the most ideal game for the radio, to be honest. And I think that's the way I've listened to it most of the time. So that's a little bit of my bias there, but it's like the perfect thing for just a radio, which I don't think many people do anymore. But I know they want to watch the game. They want to see what's going on. They want to see the action.
Yeah, and I'm with you though. I think baseball, I tend to leave. I put it on, but also do other things. Yeah, I think radio or television, and which is why one of my big pet peeves of when you have a TV broadcaster not telling you there's a no-hitter going on, because a lot of people watch it that way, where they're half listening, half watching, and then when they hear something, they perk up. So don't get me going on that. Before we move on about the actual Tigers themselves, anything you'd like to add to this, Greg, before we start talking about the lack of offense?
No, let's just go right to the lack of offense.
All right. Should we start? Who do we start with? Obviously, the Tigers guys are struggling mightily at the plate. As a team, they are slashing. They're hitting 224, 299 on base percentage, slugging 357. That's 656 OPS. That's like bottom 10 in Major League Baseball, even though offense is down this year throughout the league for the most part. But they have literally offensive black holes at like 5 positions. Between Jake Rogers and Carson Kelly at catcher, you have Spencer Torkelson, who's having a god-awful season. Rookie Colt Keeve at second is not hitting the ball at all either. We're talking guys with OPSs in the 5s and 4s. That's how low they are. Javi Baez I think as an offensive player, he's done. His OPS is 471. And Parker Meadows, I think, is hitting. His batting average is like 100. His OPS is 439. But at the very least, guys, at least Meadows, Keefe, and Baez and the catchers are playing good defense. And Meadows is an elite defensive center fielder. He's a Kevin Kiermaier. If he could become Kevin Kiermaier, I would be thrilled. He just needs to hit like 230 with some pop, and you've got yourself a 4-WAR player there. But there's no sign he can do that. But the guy catching most of the heat, guys, is obviously Spencer Torkelson. The fans, I think, are losing patience if they have not already lost patience with Torkelson. And it's not only that he's been bad at the plate, and he's been very bad. Like I said, his OPS is 587. His OPS plus, what I think league average is 100. He's at 68. And worse, he has 0 home runs. Is that his defense at first base he might be the worst defensive player in the league, not just at first base, but in Major League Baseball overall. He has -6 defensive runs saved at first base, which is not a difficult position to play. So I guess what I'm asking, I'll start with you, Nick. How much longer do you roll of some of these struggling players before changes have to be or will be made?
Based on what Scott Harris does, we may be stuck with these guys forever. It was no surprise that at the end of last season, these guys needed offense. And did they pick up offense? No, not really. And, they're going by the philosophy of we're not going to block at bats from our young players. Well, this is what you get from not blocking at bats. Just generally speaking. Is this an early season thing and it takes time for them to warm up? I don't know, but it makes for pretty lousy baseball while you wait. Yeah. And Torkelson in particular, man, I am so fatigued. I have Torkelson fatigue, to be honest. I'm so sick of hearing, will he or will he not ever hit? I mean, we talked about this his rookie season. We talked about this last year. At the end of last year, everybody had a hard on because he had 30 home runs and almost 100 RBIs. And they were high on him this year. Okay, Torkelson's finally arrived. Out of a 2.5-year Major League Baseball career, he's had 3.5, 4 good months total. Everything else has been what you're seeing right now is what you've seen most of the time from Torkelson. So Does that mean he's like basically you weather a storm for half a season and he's going to pick up in June, July? I don't know. Honestly, I'm kind of, and you guys know me for having said this before. It's like I'm not going to follow the Tigers that closely this year, just because I'm sick of this crap that they're putting on the field. It's just not that exciting. I wish it was different because I think they have really good pitching. You know, they have a couple starters that are pretty damn good. But I can't watch this knowing kind of these flaws, and they're sort of ignoring it.
And
it's been
that's
a chronic
the thing.
problem.
You're right, Nick, because we're almost to the point where Torkelson has essentially almost 3 full seasons of plate appearances under his belt at this point. When you look at his total numbers, and at this point, that the second half of last year is looking like the outlier compared to the rest of compared to the remainder of his career. And we're not even talking. People are all excited about him. He was still only an 800 OPS guy. He was essentially in the second half last year a league average first baseman. He was essentially CJ Cron. He was, that's, which is, those guys are literally dime a dozen. There's a reason why players like Cron or Brandon Belt, these guys that have 20, 30 home run power from first base are constantly get 1-year contracts because there's a glut of them. These guys aren't that valuable. They give you 2 WAR and 25 home runs. At a position where you realistically want 40 home runs and a 900 OPS. Greg, where are you on all this when it comes to the players like Colt Keith is really struggling mightily. So is Parker Meadows. I know they're pretty much stuck with Baez and pretty much the same at catcher for the most part. But you would think at some point, especially with the rookies, they might want to send them back down to AAA, if anything, just to get their confidence back up or give them a chance to catch their breath.
Well, this was always going to be the concern. We talked about it at the beginning of the season. We talked about it in spring training, that they're relying too much on youth.
Yeah.
Way too much on youth. There are not enough veteran proven hitters to kind of take the pressure off some of these kids. And then this is what you get. You get the Colt Keiths, you get the Meadowses, you get Torque, you get, the one guy that's really obviously coming into his own, I'm sure we'll talk about him, is Riley Green. Yeah. But other than that, there's no thumper in that lineup. There's nobody that strikes fear. There's nobody that everybody kind of stops what they're doing to watch their at bat. It makes for really boring, frustrating baseball. And I don't have here's the thing too. I was thinking about this earlier today. When a baseball team doesn't hit, you just don't have any confidence that they can win any games. You don't have any confidence that they can win any games because know that the other team has to be held to 1 or 2 runs for your team to have a shot at winning. And they're probably going to lose tonight 2-1. They're probably going to lose 2-1 again tonight.
Yeah, it's in the bottom of the 8th right now. 2-1.
Too many 2-1 losses. Too many trying to hold on to a 1-run lead, and then the other team snatches the game away at the end because why? Because the Tigers can't add any tack on runs. And tonight Riley Green hits the first pitch of the game.
Yep.
First pitch of the game out of the ballpark for a 1-run lead, and that's it offensively. That's it.
Yep.
First pitch of the game, and 100 some odd pitches later, that's all they have is the 1 run. And they're probably going to lose tonight 2-1.
Yep.
And that's why I don't have any confidence. They'll probably get swept in Cleveland because they can't score. And it's very frustrating. I don't know. I've tried and I have been defending Scott Harris, but saying that he's got a plan, and I believe he does. But the plan though that he has is flawed in the sense that I think they were putting too much. And I'm okay with giving Colt Keith the starting second baseman job. I really am. Am. I mean, he's one of the top prospects. I'm not as concerned about because he's a genuine rookie. I mean, a genuine rookie. Torque, like you mentioned, three seasons worth of plate appearances. Meadows, looks completely over.
For the most part, because he only played in September last year. So.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
So,
his defense, I think that's the only thing keeping him in the bigs right now.
The only thing clearly it is. The only thing you can really hope for is that these youngsters will figure things out, and the ones that look so bad now will eventually be the core of a good team down the line. But it's really not, to Nick's point, and he's been on this bandwagon. It's not exciting baseball. It's not a good product, and it's I don't know if I'm disappointed or annoyed or angry. It's just not good. It's just not fun. It's not fun to watch 2-1 losses. It's not fun to watch that weekend series in New York. It's just, between the weather and the delays and the it's like pulling teeth for these guys to score runs. It's just so God almighty. It's just really bad right now.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to add, I feel really bad for the pitchers. Like I said, the starting pitchers for the most part.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And, they pitched 6-7 really good innings. Schoolboy last night was solid, and he's been pitching lights out.
Yeah, he's a young candidate, for Christ's sake.
And then you rely on relievers, which I hate relying on relievers because they tend to blow it for you.
Mm-hmm.
But, they're also not scoring any runs in response to that. The relievers are not going to hold it every single night. They're going to lose games for you. For sure. Because they're not good pitchers to begin with, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And so... But you need to generate some offense. You can't just have these feast or famine games where you score 1 run, 2 runs, 1 run, 0 runs, and then 7 for a couple games. Like, you're not going to go that far. The fact that they're 500 right now, or above 500 at all, is surprising. Take a picture of that because the standings, they're going to go back to being the same old Tigers, I guess. So,
yeah, because
they need hitting.
Yeah, and as Greg mentioned, there are a couple of guys are hitting. Obviously, Riley Green is really turning into one of the best players in baseball. He's I think top 10 in WAR. He's got an OPS in the mid 9.5 at this. 0.95. I mean, that's elite level offensive production, and he's playing excellent defense. They're getting a surprising amount of production from Winsell Perez, who they brought up about a month ago, and all that kid done is hit for the most part. Mark Canha, he's the professional hitter when you talk about the guys always getting on base. The problem is there's not much else, and as you said, Greg, Riley Green is playing great baseball right now, and if he stays healthy, he's going to have that breakout season where he's going to get a lot of national notice. It's just a shame it's going to happen on a team where essentially he has to do everything when it comes to offense on this team.
Well, back to Torkelson, and I've defended him as well. I've tried to preach patience. I've tried to say, look, you got to put pieces around him. It shouldn't be all on his shoulders and so forth. But there's no question that I can see. I understand where patience is wearing thin on him. It's because it's not like he's barreling up balls and he's hitting them right at people. It's not that kind of a slump where it's not that kind of a slump.
He's just not hitting the ball hard. He just doesn't hit.
He's not hitting the ball hard. He's missing. He's taking pitches that he should be swinging at.
Yeah,
he's just flat out. He's late on fastballs. I don't know. I don't. And this is a tough one because I don't know that necessarily sending him to the minors, which a lot of people want to do, is necessarily, I'm looking at this from the Tigers' perspective, and I know that to send him down right now might on the surface appear to be what's good for everyone. Be good for him, be good for everyone involved. If he were just to go away for a while, play in Toledo for a little bit, and come back. But then here's the risk, and nobody really thinks about this. When you send a guy down like that, he has to earn his way back.
Yeah.
And if he goes down there and doesn't earn his way back, they're 1 out away from losing 2-1. And if he goes down there and doesn't find himself and doesn't make it so that we just talked to Gary Cooper earlier in the show,
Yeah.
who never dreamed that he would never go back to the big leagues after what happened in 1980. You send Torque down there, and he might get a couple of token recalls because he's a 1-1, but eventually maybe, they DFA him or something. They cut him. And so just sending him down there isn't the panacea.
No.
And, everybody seems to think, well, all he has to do is go down there and find his stroke and come back and it'll be fine. What if he goes down there and shits the bed in Toledo? Then what are you going to do?
Yeah, people always bring up Max Scherzer when they did it to him.
You're going to have to admit, well, you know what?
Yeah.
Guess what? It didn't work out. And they lost 2-1.
Yeah.
Green just 1-2-3 in the ninth inning. Probably,
guy
probably threw 5 pitches.
You guys you just mentioned this, Greg. During Torkelson's rookie season, I think they sent him down back to Toledo at some point because he was really shitting the bed already.
They may have.
Just for that same reason, to get his swing back and all this other crap, and he came back and he was still Spencer Torkelson that we know and don't really love too much.
Right.
So I'm not sure what that would do, honestly. It's hard. Let's not point to Max Scherzer, too. At that time, he got sent to the minors. His brother also committed suicide, and that probably switched something else also and on him. So,
yeah, because fans always tend to bring up Max Scherzer, but I still, I think the more likely scenario is Christian Stewart. Remember he was supposed to be the next great Tigers outfielder, and he ended up being essentially a 4A guy. He got a handful of chances at the big club, but come up. He would make the team in the spring, come up, shit the bed, go back down, and they did that thing a few different times until they finally washed their hands of him. And I think at this point, when it comes to Torkelson, the only thing that's keeping him that at least giving the Tigers hope, or the fact that they haven't done the Christian Stewart thing with him yet, is that he's the first overall pick of the draft. And at this point, though, the ship on him being an impact ball player, I think, is sailed. Like I said, if he can just become a league average first baseman, I think that's the hope. But he is so far from that right now. I'd rather see anybody else at the plate than him at this point. Well, maybe other than Javi Baez. And that's another whole can of worms with this team, because Javi Baez is essentially unplayable as an offensive player at this point. Again, good. He still plays good defense, but Javi Baez, guys, I mean, we've talked about this as well. The people were warning the Tigers that he was so dependent on athleticism that the moment he started to lose that athleticism, he was going to drop off a cliff when his decline hit. Well, that's exactly what happened with Javi Baez. As soon as he started to lose some of that athleticism, lost some of that bat speed, he became an even worse guess hitter, and now he's essentially Ed Brinkman. And you can't win in Major League Baseball with Ed Brinkman or Mark Belanger anymore. You actually need a productive shortstop. And
here's
the entire infield can't hit right now.
Well, okay, here's the thing. This is now, you can talk about, say what you will about Scott Harrison. You can cuss at him and call him a bunch of names. That's fine. But this problem,
I know Nick will.
That we're talking about. This problem that we're talking about, however, goes way, way, way back, decades, where the Tigers have not been able to develop hitters. This has gone on for years. Okay, it's not a Scott Harris thing. I mean, it's Scott Harris's fix, yes, but this is not a Scott Harris problem. Okay, this has been going on, and I'm not excusing Scott Harris. I'm just saying that this has been going on for years and years and years for whatever reason. The Tigers, those teams that Jimmy Leland managed from 2006 to 2013, that were in the playoffs just about every year, went to World Series and Division Championship Series and all sorts of things, were basically built around trades and free agent signings. They were not homegrown. That was not a homegrown situation. The 2006, yes, you had. I'm talking about bats now. Yeah, you had Verlander and you had Zumaya, homegrown pitchers. That's true. Right. But for the most part, everybody else was a free agent signing or somebody that Dave Dombrowski got via trade.
Right.
And that's
I think
okay.
the guy that the only homegrown player was Curtis Granderson.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's what when I think about the Tigers now today in the situation that they're in right now, that's what grinds my gears. Not just that what's going on right now, but that this has been going on for so long through multiple administrations. Back to the Jim Campbell days, really, and Bill LaJoy and so forth. I don't get it. Some franchises just can't do it. Some franchises cannot develop good, hitters. They just can't. And I don't know why the Tigers have not been able to do that. They had a couple of them, Nick Castellanos was okay. They traded him. But for the most part, it's been a bunch of garbage. You mentioned Christian Stewart. There's a lot of Christian Stewart types in that category you're talking about that we thought were going to be something. Cameron Maben.
Yeah.
And I know he's not, he wasn't homegrown in the sense that I think that, he was homegrown.
He was. They kept trading him away and then trading back for him.
Kept reacquiring him.
Yeah.
There's been so many guys like that I don't get it. It's very maddening, and it's really bad when baseball it's a grind. It's every single day, and these fans every night have to watch these guys struggle. A 2-1 lead may as well be 10-1. May as well be 10-1 because okay, that's it. They're done. They can't. They won't get it. They did tie the game against the Yankees Sunday 2-2, and then Chafin, who's been so good this year, lefty against lefty matchup, gets lit up on a bases clearing double, bases clearing double, and that was the end of that game. Nick's right. This over 500 stuff is an aberration. They'll probably, this offense, they'll probably win 70 to 75 games in a winnable division with pitching that's going to finish in the upper half of the American League, which is all going to go to waste. Poor Reese Olson, who hasn't even won a game yet, has got a whip of like 1 point. It's low whip, low ERA. Yeah, he's winless. He should.
Reese Olson is the case against pitcher wins because he has pitched great.
And poor Skubal went out there and pitched his brains out yesterday, all for naught. Flaherty tonight. Who was it? Wasn't it Flaherty who struck out like 55 batters a few days ago? And
he struck out 14 and he struck out the first 7 he faced. Yeah.
They still lost.
And they lost the game.
Yeah, of course.
I think Flaherty leads the league in strikeouts right now, if I'm not mistaken. And what is he, like 1-0 or like 2? Like it's like a ridiculous win-loss record.
Yeah.
So
it's nuts. It really, really is.
So let me go into this with build on what Greg was saying about. You're absolutely right that the Tigers cannot develop a hitter to save their lives. I think they develop enough hitters where you can say they did it accidentally, and that's it.
Right? Yeah. Exactly. Blind squirrel thing. Yeah. Right.
About once every 5 years, 10 years or so. Yeah.
Like somebody comes in that has like a major league bat, but so what does that tell you? You want to field the major league team. There's 2 other ways to do it: free agency and trade, which is what Dave Dombrowski did, and that's why they were successful. Yeah. You're absolutely right. My beef with Scott Harris is he's got his head up his ass trying to develop players and relying on like first, second, and third year players who can't hit for shit, with the exception of Riley Green, and who is actually he's that accidental player that they got right, maybe.
Yeah, right.
But Harris isn't trying to make a trade for a hitter. He's not really trying to sign many like really good free agent hitters. So this is the shit show that we get because of it. So he's not trying to build a major league competitor, to be honest. So, and
again, I guess at this point we'll just have to wait and see if they do anything. But yeah, it's beginning to look like, I won't say the start was a mirage. I'd just say the ceiling for this team is 500, which is not going to be enough to put them in the playoffs. All right, let's talk a little bit of the Lions, guys, because guess what? New uniforms for them too. A couple days before the NFL draft, the Lions updated their Honolulu blue and silver uniforms. They changed the number font. I like the look of that uniform better now. They went back to a white number away from the silver number. They got rid of the WCF patch. Thank the Lord. Now it's just going to be a sticker.
Oh, God.
Helmet. Yes. But the big change is they released a new black alternate with a new helmet as well. It's essentially last year's matte blue helmet, but they got rid of the long lion and they went with a black lion with a black face mask. So I have to admit, I wasn't sure about the black uniforms because it brought back horrible memories of the Matt Millen era when he brought back black unis for a couple of years and the Lions were god awful. But I don't have too many complaints. We'll see how they look on the field and all that. The one issue I have with black is that everybody has black, and that's my one issue. It doesn't feel very creative. But otherwise, I think the uniforms look good. I always have liked the Lions uniforms. I prefer the updating it rather than blowing it up and starting over. Stick with the color, stick with the team stuff. Just update a little bit, and that's what they did. Greg, where do you fall on the new uniform?
Yeah, no, I like the nod to the 70s, 80s uniforms for sure, with the blue, the classic blue with the white.
Exactly.
Very clean look.
Mm-hmm.
I love that they did that for sure. I was never a fan of these newer uniforms with the weird looking font on the number and the dull gray, the stripe on the helmet.
I don't like the gray pajamas. Oh, those are horrible.
Yeah.
Yes.
The helmet, I didn't like the stripes. I'm glad they're going to back to when you and I first followed the team with the white stripe in the middle with the blue two stripes around it, and it's a nice look, very clean. I'm with you on the black. Black doesn't do it for me. As far as I'm concerned, the only team that can wear black is the Raiders. I mean, it seems like every other team that wears black or tries to incorporate black, it just doesn't look good. Maybe the Falcons, because that's when they started, when they first entered the league, they wore black. And the Raiders, of course. Every other team, it seems forced. It seems like it's forced to me.
Well, except for the Steelers. The Steelers, maybe.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
There's a handful, but we're talking about teams that have worn it for years.
Right.
Not teams like you'll see Carolina. Why does Carolina have a black jersey? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. So, I can take the black or leave it, but I'm glad they went back to that 70s, 80s.
Yes.
More traditional look. I was glad to see that.
Nick, what is your take on the new Lions uniforms?
I think they look okay. I think they still keep sort of the Lions brand and symbols somewhere in there. Yeah. It's not like I was saying about the Tigers. It's like there's no English D. It doesn't look like anything connected with Detroit Tigers from any time in their history. So, but overall, my general feeling about uniforms, I think other people are more interested in the differences than I am overall. I'm not going to buy a jersey no matter what it looks like. I'm kind, and they could look. A team's uniforms could look really, really good, and they could suck still. So it doesn't help them hit. It's not going to help the Tigers hit a baseball, to be honest, and which is the part I care about. So fine, wear that. I agree, Al, what you said, that those like whatever gray or whatever color that look like made them look like pajamas. You should have seen the Seattle Seahawks version of that. They look like literally a bunch of bananas. Is what that color was so god awful. I'm like, I'm colorblind, and that looks like shit. So, but
okay. With that, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Anything else you wanted to add there?
No. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think ending on the Seattle Bananas is a good place to end on when it comes to uniforms. We need to move on to the NFL draft. Not so much the draft itself, because I know how you guys feel. I'm not one to analyze who they took or gave it a grade. I'm just happy they took some highly ranked defensive backs. We'll see what happens from there on. But the draft itself, the city of Detroit really put on a show. It was downtown Detroit, and it seemed to be a hit with the fans, with the media, with the league, TV. Everybody seemed to really, everybody seemed to love the whole damn event, and which is shocking. Attendance records were shattered. They had 275 people estimated downtown for the first round of the draft on Thursday night, and seeing that roar come up when they announced that they were drafting, they had traded up for Terry and Arnold, and just this bellowing roar coming from almost 300,000 people downtown was really a sight to see. Overall, there was, they say 775,000 people showed up over the 3 days, which is at an attendance record, breaking the 600K that showed up in Nashville 4 years ago. But honestly, guys, I don't think Detroit's ever looked better on a national stage. I mean, there is now talk that the success of this will give the city further opportunities at big events. They already have the 2027 Final Four, but one of the events that always comes up that never comes to Detroit is the NBA All-Star Game. I didn't realize this. I remember the All-Star Game at the Silverdome in 1979, but the only other All-Star Game held by the Pistons was at the Olympia in 1959. So, you know, so it's now there's talk that the NBA is finally going to come here. They had some arcane rules about the type of hotel rooms being available, and supposedly that is going to be solved with the new Hudson skyscraper that is almost done, and there's supposed to be a 5-star hotel as part of that complex. But Nick, you know, you saw this from a distance. I thought Detroit looked absolutely awesome that weekend, and it's rare to see after decades of people shitting on Detroit to see universal praise.
I would totally agree with that. I'm not a big fan of having attended like something like this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I would go through the trouble, but you know, for 3 days, the city looked fantastic.
Yep.
There was a lot, you know, the crowds was just kind of unbelievable for what that event actually was. It's just like really unmanageable.
A lot of hurry up and waiting. Essentially all it is. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, it was in a very positive light. There wasn't any, and there weren't any ugly incidents or like you know, fights breaking out, which was fantastic. Right. And that's the part I would have kind of been like, when is this going to happen? When is something ugly going to start? And like, it didn't. And so I am happy for the city that they looked really good for a change. And as far as like drawing in an NBA All-Star game, I wish we had an NBA team there.
Right. Yeah. Just wait on that till they get a team worthy of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe the next time they actually have a first-round pick is the year that they actually have a what do you call it? The All-Star game there. But you know, hopefully they do draw some more of these kind of one-off games or you know, sporting events. Why not?
Yeah, and exactly. Detroit's a first-class city. At least today it is. It's not the city people thought, you know, when you heard it compared to Beirut 30 years ago, which were overblown to begin with, if you ask me. You know, because you would always see the same pictures. Oh, there's the Packard plant. That's the one they would always aim at, or the Michigan Central train station, which has been totally refurbed now by Ford. So yeah, the city's a completely different animal. Still has its bad areas, but now it's far more like any other big city where it has vast areas, I should say, of very nice, fun to visit areas. Greg, what's your take on the how the draft went for the city of Detroit? Because I know you entertained the thought about going, but with that huge crowd, you probably made the right decision to not go.
Yeah, no, I saw how many people were down.
I mean, they closed the doors essentially before it even started. It was so fun.
Yeah. No, I was just as happy, believe me, to see see it from television from afar. But I was happy that the city came out for sure. I think they really put on a good show. I think kudos to whoever did that on behalf of the Lions and the city. I think they really and I wrote it in my piece last week about this. And Nick said what I had said as well, which was there were no real incidents. You know, you get that many people downtown, you know, and things could happen maybe in other cities. There was nobody. It was just nothing. It was just everybody having a good time. You know, I mean, it was just a good look for the city, and it really came at a really good time. I mean, because the Lions themselves have made such a resurgence that I think that really was kind of fed into what we saw downtown. It just goes to show you that if the Lions ever did win a Super Bowl, that crowd that you saw at Campus Martius is going to be dwarfed by how many people would be downtown for a parade up and down Woodward Avenue. But it was a good look for the city. It was good for the NFL, frankly, because the NFL, I get the feeling the NFL, and they won't say it, but I get the feeling the NFL is kind of riding the coattails of the Lions right now. The Lions are like the media darlings of the NFL. I never thought I'd say that, but they are. And I think that everyone is globbing onto this Lions mania. It's only getting bigger. We thought it was big in 2022 when they were on Hard Knocks. We thought it was big last summer when there was anticipation after their fast end to the 2022 season. And now this draft, and it's just the resurgence of the team. That's why I titled my column, America's Team 2. I really believe that the Lions have got a fan base all across the country. I think the league loves it. This is a great story because that franchise has been down for so long. And I think that Roger Goodell would, again, he'll never say it, but I'm sure he would love to hand that Lombardi trophy to Sheila Ford Hamp. And that would be quite a moment for not just the Lions, but for the entire NFL.
Yeah. And Nick, it's not just some of the stuff not some of the stuff that Greg has brought up with this, about this resurgence of the Lions and the coattails. I think it helps a lot that the Lions really come across as a very likable organization run with a lot of likable coaches in front office and a lot of likable players. I mean, you can't hate a lot of these. How can you hate Dan Campbell as Nick? I mean, as Greg now he's done the Al Ackerman where "Bless You Boys" started as sarcastic and it became a rallying cry. Now his meathead has become a loving term for Dan Campbell.
I don't know. I think the thing I'm enjoying is Brad Holmes calling out all the draft experts and giving them the middle finger. I'm liking that one, actually. And I've said it before. I admire Brad Holmes because I see this a lot when I work a lot with inventors and like people that try and solve problems. He's really asking the right questions and not following some guidelines or some stupid dogma about positional. He harped on positional value too. Yeah. It's like, I didn't even know what the hell that was. And it's a stupid idea, to be honest. And so he was just like, let me try and find a good football player that works on our team. And his hit rate is pretty high with his players. I mean, look at it. Like he just, I think we were going to talk about it, Sewell and St. Brown.
Yeah.
I think one of the signs that people say it's like, you're picking well is when you get guys on second contracts wanting to stay. And, they've got two guys from the same draft year signing big contracts because they're actually really good contributors. It used to be the Lions may try and sign one guy to a big contract, desperate to have a good player stay on the Lions, but have a shitty team around them. That's not the case with these guys.
Yeah.
And then wait till you see what they're going to pay Goff, which is not going to be a little. So, but going back to the Brad Holmes thing, it's fantastic to see that. I think he's approaching the draft about as intelligently as you can, to be honest.
Yeah, and actually that gives us Nick gives us that's a good segue into the Amon-Ra, St. Brown, and Penei Sewell contract extensions that were signed the day before the draft, and that both these guys signed huge record-breaking deals. Amon-Ra became the highest-paid wide receiver in football for about 36 hours until the Eagles signed A.J. Brown. But again, that's the point. It was like all these guys were waiting for one of them to blink and sign a contract, and that sets the base, and then other guys start to leapfrog that. But I think the big one is Sewell. As good as Amon-Ra is, I think Sewell really when it's all said and done, I think he is going to be the best player of this generation of Lions. I mean, he's only 23 years old. He's a Pro Bowler. He's an All-Pro. He's considered, if not the best, one of the best tackles in football, period. And not just as a right tackle. And when the time comes, he will move to the left. But he signed a massive 4-year. Well, first off, they picked up the 5th year of his contract. And that was the difference. He being a first-round pick, he had an extra 5th year on that contract the Lions picked up. And then they tacked on a 4-year, $112 million extension, very, very highly backloaded. Meanwhile, the Sun God, since he was a 4th-round pick, didn't have that 5th year. So he got a 4-year, $120 million extension in his 4th year. So, but again, these are both heavily backloaded contracts. But I don't know about you, Greg, but I really do think that when it's all said and done, Sewell is going to be the Lions player, I guess, of this generation. He just seems to be a guy who the Lions are going to. He's going to be their. Oh God! Name a famous Hall of Fame offensive lineman. He is going to be the Lions version of that. I mean, this is the guy I think that the Lions are going to keep. He's one of those. If there is a cornerstone, Greg, Sewell is the cornerstone of this Lions team, and they had to. They had to sign him. They had.
I would absolutely 100% agree. I have called him already, and I know this might be me going off the deep end. He's only played 3 seasons, but I call him the Lions version of Anthony Munoz.
That's the name I was trying to think of.
He will be the Lions Anthony Munoz. Mark my words. He will play only in Detroit. He will retire a Lion. He'll make 1 million Pro Bowls. He'll make 1 million All-Pro teams. He'll go into the Hall of Fame. I know that's a lot of. I know people say, "What are you talking about? He's 3 years." I've seen enough. Yep. I've seen enough. This kid is unbelievable. And the thing that's exciting about him, unlike Anthony Munoz, who I'm not going to take anything away from, he is an athletic
freak.
Stool. Yes, he's an athletic freak. And to your point, he's only 23. This would be about the time that Munoz would be entering the NFL.
Right.
Sewell's already got 3 years in at age 23. He's an absolute. Your word cornerstone is dead on. He is indeed going. And the thing too, the reason why you can say that, by the way, is because unlike a skilled player like a St. Brown or somebody like that, those guys have generally, for the most part, shorter shelf lives where they are elite. Okay, there's a window of time. Jerry Rice, that's years ago. There's a window of time now where guys like St. Brown are elite, and he's entering it right now. He's 25, 26 years old. For maybe 4 or 5 years, he will be elite. Okay, and then after that, we don't know. But a guy like Sewell, though, and I'm not sure if it's because it's just a less taxing position or whatever, is you can put him at right tackle and, like you said, eventually move him to left tackle if you want, and just stick him there. And he's proven so far to be durable. He's not injury prone, which is good. He can stay in the field. He's perfect. He's perfect in every way. His attitude, he's very. His personality, I think, is works well here. I think you don't see a lot of right tackles that get this kind of love, but anybody who sees this guy play, believe me, he's impenetrable. He's absolutely impenetrable, and he will be without question the Lions' best offensive lineman that I've ever seen and has ever played for the franchise. Not even close. And that's all due respect to Lomas Brown. This guy is going to make Lomas Brown look like a backup left guard. And this guy is amazing.
Yeah. He is. You pretty much summed it up right there. I can't top what you just said about Sewell. It's absolutely dead on as well. Nick, were you surprised that? I think everybody was expecting. There's 3 guys that need an extension. The one guy they didn't announce was Jared Goff, the quarterback, who you mentioned is likely going to get the biggest of the 3 contracts. And it was reported by one of the NFL talking heads that talks are ongoing, but no deal is yet imminent. So were you kind of surprised that Goff wasn't announced as well when it came to a contract extension?
Not necessarily. I mean, who's going to get the biggest contract on any team? It's going to be your quarterback, and they're going to be your most expensive player. So, by paying Goff a lot, what is he going to get? 40, 50 million a year? It might be something ridiculous. You have to. That takes away salary cap from other players too. So you have to really figure out how you're going to pay Goff and still maintain a playoff caliber team. So it doesn't surprise me that it'll take a long time. I have a feeling they'll get it done. It's just like, what are the specifics of it? It's that's what's unknown, but I think they'll get it done during the summer. I don't see why not.
Yeah, Greg, do you think there's a little bit of game of chicken going on here? There's a handful of quarterbacks waiting for one of them to sign, so that that baseline is finally laid. Because I think there's talk that Dak Prescott's due for a contract. There's a couple other guys out there as well, and we've already seen like what Kirk Cousins got in free agency. So who people is a very similar quarterback to Jared Goff. So do you just think it's more of they're much like I said with the wide receivers? People are waiting for one of the quarterbacks to blink and sign a contract?
Well, it could be that, but it could just also be just a matter of the fact that both sides want each other. I don't think that. I think Goff wants the Lions want Goff. I don't think either side feels any sense of urgency to get it done, in the sense that they're afraid that one's going to be upset with the other. I think there's a mutual respect there and a mutual. Jared Goff is absolutely beloved in Detroit, and he loves
Jared Goff.
fans.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, and I think he loves the fans back. He wants to be here. I mean, Brad Holmes and the Lions ownership don't have to, court this guy. They don't have to wine and dine him. He'll sign. And I don't know when, but I'm not concerned about that at all. He'll sign. To your point about the chicken thing, I don't know. I don't know if it's that. I think it might be that elsewhere. I don't think it's that here. I hear Prescott's name and I kind of roll my eyes. I don't know what the Cowboys don't want to think with him. I don't know what the big thing is about Prescott. I really don't. The Cowboys haven't won anything in 30 years as a franchise, as far as that goes. But whatever. I mean, all I'm concerned about is Detroit, and they'll sign.
Yeah. It's I think Goff has realized if he could win a Super Bowl here, he would become absolutely lionized in a good way, in Detroit. Now, good Lord, they would build a statue. He would get a bigger statue than RoboCop did, essentially, if he could win a Super Bowl here. But yeah, it's nice kind of closing out the show, talking about a franchise that is seemingly at this point making all the right decisions, is being very competently run. And as you said, Greg, has really become America's team. Now, much more so. Nobody seems to hate the Lions, maybe other than other teams in our division. but around the country, they really do seem to be the new America's team. All right, I think it's time to start wrapping things up, because we've been going. I know we're over 2 hours at this point, so that means it's time for our jerk of the week. Nick, you're up first. Who's your jerk?
All right. Well, I had a hard time until I saw some posts today, and I watched some clips of this Tom Brady roast that's supposed to be streaming on, is it Netflix, I think?
Netflix, yeah. It was live on Netflix last night.
And I watched some clips of it today thinking, let's see, I like roast. I used to remember the old Dean Martin roasts, which, those were masterful. I mean, because they had comedians on there. Right. This was a junk food spectacle they brought in celebrities. They wrote canned jokes for a bunch of football players and coaches and everything else. Mm-hmm. And at least from the clips I saw, the jokes were lame. They brought in some comedians. I forget the guy's name, but he actually poked fun at Kim Kardashian, who was in the audience. Mm-hmm. And Tony Hinchcliffe, I think, was the comedian.
Yeah, I saw his name kind of pop up on social media. So yeah,
and Kim Kardashian invites a lot of maybe mockery or fun, but I thought even what he said to her was like super distasteful. So I think that was just a shit show. There's no way I'm going to watch the whole thing. I don't really give a damn. I like Tom Brady as a quarterback. I think he's an asshole as a person. I just kind of like, I'm tired of him. I wish he would retire and go away. So my jerk of the week is that phony roast.
Yeah. And well, let me ask you this. Do you actually think Tom Brady, Nick, is going to be a decent NFL broadcast analyst? Because for everything I see of the guy, he has absolutely no personality at all.
I don't know. He seems like a self-absorbed jerk a little bit, as far as I can tell. I haven't seen him do a broadcast, so I have no idea.
Yeah, and
to
Fox
be honest,
is paying him some stupid amount of money next year to actually be a NFL analyst, which I find ridiculous myself. But
I think they pushed out who did they push out to replace? Is it Greg Olsen?
Greg Olsen, yeah, he is no longer be the number one guy. It's going to be Brady.
I mean, I see that's. Yeah, I mean, they're trying to draw on Brady's star power, which I don't know. To me, it's getting kind of tiresome. Brady was a good quarterback, but he also had a good team, and so he could win a lot. And I'm talking about a fellow Michigan alum, so and I kind of rooted for him, but I think it's too much. It's overdone.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I found this. I know what I was doing last night as that roast was going on. I was watching a Game 7 in the NHL. Something far more entertaining. And it was a fun game too. It was a 2-1 game. Vegas got knocked out, I believe, by Dallas. It was a fun game. Greg, who is your jerk of the week?
Well, first I want to comment on Nick's jerk, and I'm sitting here thinking about analysts, and it's funny to me that the NFL or the networks haven't really tried going back to the well of hiring former coaches as analysts because they were so successful with John Madden. Dick Vermeil was good.
Yes.
There's been a lot of former coaches who've made, to me, even Jerry Glanville was kind of entertaining in a way. That made for interesting.
Hank Stram was another one.
Yeah, I mean, they were kind of interesting in the booth. They're of course, they know the game, and nobody's really tried to go back to that. They keep trying former players. And to your point, Al, about Brady, I don't see it either. I don't see a personality there, but we'll see. My jerk of the week, you guys already know what it is. I said it. I told you 2 weeks ago.
Here's Greg's victory lap.
I told you 2 weeks ago. I said my jerk of the week for May 6th will be the Toronto Maple Leafs, and sticking to it. I said they're going to lose the series. They're going to break their fans' hearts again in the playoffs and get eliminated in the first round again. And that's exactly what happened. And they lost a Game 7 in overtime on a crappy goal, a dump in that Pasternak just outskated everybody and made some little dipsy doodle move. And I don't even know how that even got past the goalie. It was as far as Game 7 overtime game goals go, that was one of the worst I've ever seen. I mean, absolutely pathetic. And the beat goes on. 57 years and counting now since the Maple Leafs won a Stanley Cup, and they keep getting eliminated in the first round. Almost
it's hilarious.
And so, I don't. I'm jerk of the week because it's just ridiculous. It's getting absolutely ridiculous. I don't care that they're playing the Bruins, who are a very good team. I don't care. The Leafs are supposed to be a pretty good team too. They got the best player in the world, and and for all these people who are every Austin Matthews, Connor McDavid, this guy that the Blackhawks got, this other guy.
Bedard.
Yeah, Bedard. All these supposedly great players so far haven't won anything. I mean, Matthews has been in the league for a lot longer than you think he has been. McDavid has been as well. Their teams never go anywhere. Never. The only one who was really heralded and led his team to the promised land in recent years was Sidney Crosby. Yeah. All these other guys who get drafted high and score 1 million goals never lead their team to any sort of anything. So, and what happened again this year? Austin Matthews scores 1 million goals, and what happens? They lose in the first round.
Yep.
It's funny that you say that, Greg. I was listening to Don Cherry has a podcast, Don Cherry's Grapevine, and they pointed out in that podcast that the top goal scorer in the league, the top goalies in the league, the top, coach of the year candidates in the league, their teams are all out.
Right.
Like, so any of these like top whatever awards, these guys are all out of the playoffs. And so which tells you if the Wings get just a little bit better, they have some chances.
Mm-hmm.
So they're maybe not as far down as we might think. So.
Yeah, and also worth noting, there's 2 Canadian teams left, and they're playing each other in this round. Was it Vancouver and Edmonton? So that should be a fun series to watch. So, but yeah, it's Greg. You can take as many victory laps as you want when it comes to the damn Maple Leafs. That and I can just imagine what the uproar in Toronto, which is essentially the New York of Canada. The uproar that's going on in Toronto right now around the Maple Leafs because they're essentially the New York Yankees of Canada. So it's hilarious to say the very least. So, but you nailed it. You called it. It's hilarious. Anyway, okay, my jerk of the week. I was thinking of going to Patrick Beverley, who after his team got knocked out of the NBA playoffs, refused to answer a question. If he wouldn't answer a question because the reporter asking the question didn't subscribe to his podcast. And of course the shit hit the fan about that. And there's a whole, he ended up having to apologize and the media went absolutely ham on him. And even ESPN supposedly suspended him because he's been a talking head on ESPN in the past. But no, I'm going to stick with sports for once. I'm not going with sports media or anything like that. My jerk of the week is the Atlanta Falcons. Because they are a team that spent $100 million plus on Kirk Cousins to be their quarterback. And you don't spend that kind of money in free agency on a quarterback unless you plan on winning now. And from all accounts, they should be a playoff contender, the Atlanta Falcons, especially in the division they're in. Yet they decided with all their wisdom, of the supposedly smart front office, they decided to not draft a weapon for Cousins or an offensive lineman or someone on defense. They drafted a quarterback. And not just a quarterback. They took the oldest quarterback in the draft in Michael Penix, who also has a long injury history. He was a 6-year player, I believe, in college. And what makes it even funnier is that today it came out. Kirk Cousins left Minnesota because Minnesota told him in this draft they were drafting his heir apparent. So he signs with Atlanta, and what does Atlanta do? They draft his heir apparent. Oh my God! It's so screwy. You don't spend that kind of money on a quarterback and then immediately draft as a replacement. It was the silliest damn thing I've ever heard. I mean, it was. I don't know what else to say other than my jerk of the week is the Atlanta Falcons for me having, I'm no draft expert, but I am smart enough to know you don't have that. You should not have a highly paid free agent quarterback and a first round draft pick quarterback in the same room in today's salary cap era. So my jerk of the week are the Atlanta Falcons. I thought that was absolutely bonkers. And seeing the reaction draft night was absolutely hysterical.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's a good one. That's a really
all
good
right.
one. I was on Falcons Twitter there for a while, and they were, oh my God,
beside themselves, I'm sure.
Oh God, yes.
All right, well, we're not beside ourselves, but I think we need to get out of here. So, Greg, if you could get out the thank yous and the social media and all that fun stuff.
Absolutely. Thanks to Dave Mesery and Gary Cooper for spending some time with us tonight. That was really fascinating. We appreciate that. Al will include all sorts of links in the show notes on how you can help Gary out. And so we'll keep your eye out for that. And not sure what we'll do 2 weeks from tonight, May 20th. We may go guestless. We may not. We'll see what we cook up. Please subscribe to my Substack, gregeno.substack.com. I would appreciate that. Come into your inbox every Monday. Follow me on Twitter at Greg Eno, and of course follow the Knee Jerks at the Knee Jerks. I want to thank my lovely wife Sharon for putting up with this nonsense every 2 weeks, and thank you, gentlemen, for making Monday night so gosh darn fun.
And Nick, anything you'd like to add and let people know where they can find you on social media?
Yeah, my one and only place is on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. I've called it a few other things as well. I at Nick Milanovich, and one of the big things I talk about are Detroit sports. You can hear me still ranting about the Pistons right now, but I'll talk about the other teams as well, and then a few other topics. But come on and join the fun. There's a bunch of us that get together and have conversations and reminisce about Detroit sports.
Yes, and also before I tell you where you can listen to the show, I just want to give a quick shout out to Linda, who we had a bad week last week as Linda lost her beloved dog McGee. He was 13 years old. He went with us everywhere. Every trip we would go to the cabin, McGee was with us. It was a very, very hard trip to go up there without the boy.
Right.
And it broke my heart when we got up to the cabin. And as soon as Linda saw McGee's stuff, his water, his blanket and his and his bowl and everything, oh my God, she started bawling, which got me crying. Right. And the thing is, though, Linda and I have been together for 12 years. So when I met McGee, he was essentially still a puppy. So he's been a part of our entire relationship. So I just want to give a shout out to Linda. It's been a very tough week for her, a couple weeks for her, especially she had to move to midnights for 2 weeks as well, on top of everything else that was going on. Thank God she's retiring in about 6 weeks. So, but yeah, it's I just want to give a quick shout out to McGee. He was a very, very good boy.
Yeah,
right,
I was so sad to hear about that. We've all been through that, and that is no fun. And
it's. I'll just say there was a cartoon. I don't know if you're familiar with the cartoon, the comic strip Perils Before Swine, by Steve Pastis. And there's a cartoon that he wrote, a strip that he wrote. It said the pros and cons of owning a dog. Yeah. And he listed all these pros about they're loyal and lovable and so on and so forth. And then the con was it rips your heart out harder than it's ever been ripped out when they die. Yeah. And that is so true. So I really do appreciate you guys' sympathy because you guys, I know Greg saw how much I posted McGee on Facebook.
Oh,
North,
yeah. I felt like he was. I felt like I was close to McGee all those years. And when I read that post, I was just so heartbroken.
Yeah, give Bean a hug for me.
For sure, absolutely.
Yes. All right. With that,
well, sorry to hear that, Al. This is the first I'm hearing of it.
No, I know you're not on Facebook. That's the only place I posted it. So I appreciate your kind words. It really does mean a lot to hear it from you guys. All right. Anyway, to get back on track before I start crying, to listen. Actually, say this. Please like, share, and subscribe to the Knee Jerks podcast with Eno, Nick, and Big Al. We can be found at all the usual places podcasts are found and are hosted. We are on places such as Apple Podcasts. We're on YouTube Music. They no longer have Google Podcasts. It's YouTube Music with podcasts. We're on iHeartRadio. We're on Spotify. We're on Amazon Music. We're on Deezer. We're on Radio Public. We're on Gaana. The homepage for us is thekneejerks.net. And as Greg mentioned, all the links for Gary Cooper, if you want to help with his GoFundMe, and there's a change.org petition, and also link to some of the other things that Dave brought up. I'll put them all in the show notes, and you can find them at thekneejerks.net, along with you can also download the podcast from there as well. So I think with that, I think it's time to get the hell out of here because we are running along tonight. So until this time, 2 weeks from now, when who knows what the hell we'll talk about, but we'll probably bitch it about Spencer Torkelson. This is Al Beaton saying good evening, good night, and aloha, along with Nick Milanovich.
Ciao, guys.
And Greg Eno.
Ciao, Italy. We'll see you in 2 weeks.